Well, a lot of the year on Horse Sense 2.0, we have talked about 3-year-old races, and we've definitely talked about some of the older horses. But generally speaking, the 3-year-old races have been kind of more competitive. A lot of the times, the older horses, I wouldn't say duck each other, but there's a lot of good spots for them. Well, we had the Whitney, and we thought that might be the peak before the Breeders' Cup Classic. But man, this closing weekend at Saratoga and the penultimate weekend at Del Mar, which happens to be Pacific Classic Day, or include Pacific Classic Day, man, we got two really, really good races for the older handicap horses. And as you can tell, I am that much more excited than usual because I'm surprised and I'm really looking forward to it. So Bailey and I will talk about not only the Pacific Classic, but Sunday's Jockey Club Gold Cup. Up next.
Welcome back to another edition of Horse Sense. As always, I'm Bailey Armour, joined alongside specialty allergist Scott Shapiro. As we start to transition into the fall season here, poor Scott's allergies are really getting him. But it is so good to be back home after being in Seattle last week, and thank you for bearing with us during that bout of city noise, if you will. But I'm back home. Scott's been at home, and we're going to dive into the Pacific Classic out west and then bring things back east for the Jockey Club Gold Cup at Saratoga on Sunday. So a lot of monster older horses running this weekend, like Scott mentioned in our cold intro there, if you will. And we've got some monster promotions. See what I did there? To go along with it. That's going to be a $5,000 exactathon at Del Mar, and then a set of two, basically $2,500 hit and splits on the late pick 4 at Saratoga on Sunday and Monday to give you a little Labor Day action. And then, of course, Woodbine Mohawk Park, the harness track up there at Woodbine, has got a pretty solid card this weekend as well. That'll come with a $2,000 hit and split on the late pick 4. So now that all that promo stuff is out of the way, Scott, what can we expect in tournaments this week?
Well, you can first expect me to be conducting some written material on all of what you just spoke, and I'll have a exactathon article up on the blog some point on Friday. We're recording on Thursday, and then the mornings of Sunday and Monday, I will have write-ups on the hit it and split it to close things out at Saratoga. So looking forward to that. Tournament-wise, Saratoga and Del Mar center stage there with the final chance to get in to the final table of the Fun in the Sun, 7th week, right? 7th of 7.
Yeah.
And the big final table will come after this week. And then there's a lot of qualifiers still. Kentucky Downs, if that's your thing, there's a tournament for that. But as always, the best thing to do is just go to the tournaments tab. I like to kind of promote the biggest one of the week or maybe the headliner. But there's lots of action at Xpressbet, at the Xpressbet tournament scene, if you will, on the website under the tournaments tab. And very easy to find there. Plenty of tournaments to potentially register for. And then my spaces, the penultimate, I've used the word penultimate twice. Not planned, thankfully. I would never plan to use it, but that's how sick I am. I've heard it said that many times. But spaces of the summer, I'm going to have one next weekend with Bobby Shoemaker, a big tournament player. And I'm going to have one this Saturday with Travis Stone before he heads back to shift back into race calling mode in Kentucky. He'll be in handicapping mode. He's had some success in some tournaments this summer as well. So we'll talk a lot of the Saratoga card or the back half, and we'll talk about the stakes races at Del Mar. Well, Bailey, the Pacific Classic being this good this year does warm my heart. For those that don't know, you might not even know, but I kind of got my public speaking start at Del Mar, at least in horse racing. Not only was John Lee's nice enough to have me on the show a couple of times to preview the card those years, but I had a seminar there every Saturday and Sunday morning. So you'd come out early. It was right on the apron. So Del Mar holds a special place in my heart, like kind of a place where the press box felt like a home type place. But anyhow, I saw some fun Pacific Classics, but this one is as good as a race as I can remember for older horses. You know, we see a lot of good races. I think part of it is because it kind of snuck up on us, the fact that we're seeing 3 horses race that haven't raced, and they're 3 of the best horses in training. and they all have kind of question marks to an extent. You got journalism, who we have talked a ton about on this show. He's taking on older horses for the first time. I guess that's his biggest question. So, you have that question of taking on just olders is always a potential question. This time of year, not as much, but he's taking on two of the fastest in Nisos and Fierceness, who both, in my opinion, at least have distance concerns getting the 1.25 miles in here. So I think a lot of things could happen in here, even though those three seem to stand out, if you're just looking at straight figures and class and whatnot. But 1.25 miles, and I thought what would be interesting, more this week, we've talked a lot about creating horizontal wagers, constructing them, maybe talk a little bit about betting this race in exactas, and if you thought maybe trifecta, and kind of discuss where you're going from that perspective. So interesting to hear your thoughts, and then if you were able to think about the vertical wagering in this race.
Yeah, we don't need to rehash my beef with the horizontals versus verticals term. That was a couple episodes back, and I still stand by that opinion that it doesn't make any sense to me. But regardless, I will be playing those in this race, just because you've got some shorter priced horses that aren't necessarily a great, in my opinion, win wager. I don't really have any major concerns about journalism going up against older horses. I do see that side of the argument. Just for me, I don't think that it's that big of a deal. I mean, the only one that I would be concerned about him going up against is Fierceness, who is I don't know, is underlay the right word? Like a horse that you're playing underneath another one? I don't know that
underlay means a horse that you think is going to be a lower price than you think they should be. So if you think they should be 3-1 and they're 2-1, then they would be an underlay to you, and then an overlay would be the opposite. So yeah. I call it, there's a lot of ways. I usually call them underneath keys or underneath uses or something like that. There's no
underneath uses, he says. We need a good term for that. If you guys have any good terms, let me know. Sure. But a horse that I will be using under journalism is Fierceness. Of course, I really like the way that he ships out west here. Of course, he was second in the Breeders' Cup Classic here at Del Mar in 2024, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Santa Anita in 2023. I would forgive him for that laughed out Whitney effort. Sometimes, like, they're allowed to have a bad day. He's not my favorite horse in training right now, but of this field outside of journalism, I would take him. I don't know that the exact is going to pay gangbusters with the two of them there, which is why I would like to talk about a trifecta and get your thoughts.
Yeah, let's talk a little more about the overall way to look at the race, because Nisos, who you didn't mention, is one of the favorites, if not the, it's Bob Baffert. He has to answer the distance questions, but he's a neck away in the, what has been the best race probably on paper as a whole, the Churchill Downs on Derby Day, from being undefeated. So as much as it sounds like you're against them. So I think we need to talk about that for at least, you don't need to tell me 18 reasons why you are, but I want to confirm that you are, because that's going to assist us in constructing tickets.
Yeah, you beat me to my Nisos hate in my trifecta. I was going to leave him off there.
Sorry. I just wanted to
jump the gun. Too excited to talk about how much I don't like him. No, I don't like him.
What don't you like?
Well, let me tell you. I'd be so happy to tell you. He's a grade 3 winner. This is not a grade 1 horse. This is not even like really a great grade 2 horse. I mean, he's run most of his races in grade 3 races. He's not faced the caliber of horses like he's going to face today. And most of those races have been at 6 and 7 furlongs with one lone start at 1 mile and a 16th. 1.25 miles is so much further, literally, than any of those races. And why is he so lightly raced? If he's some amazing horse and he's so good, why does he only have 6 lifetime starts? Because the family
he got hurt and he took a while to get back into training.
No, he's not a good horse, and I would not include him in my major wagers at all.
Well, it's interesting because I think Bob Baffert was probably surprised that Fierceness and journalism showed up to take him on in here at first time. But he's got to find out what to do with him on Breeders' Cup Day. To me, he's never managed him like he's a 1.25 mile horse, but he's taken this chance and he's been dominant, and I don't think he's scared, but it's interesting. I mean, I understand why he would be the fade, but the fact that you're that against him is going to allow you to really, play the race a little more openly than I think you realize.
Yeah. Listen, I'm willing to be wrong. I've been wrong before, and this
Well,
wouldn't
that's
be the
good.
last
You
time.
never worry
But
about being wrong. I mean,
no,
it's
but
when
if
you
this
start
horse
worrying
beats
about being
me,
wrong, you add extra horses, and that's when you lose more.
and that's probably the most key lesson I think that we've talked about over and over again, is you can't just add horses because you're scared. And this is not a horse that I'm willing to add because I'm scared. If he beats me, that's fine. I just don't think that. Now, if fierceness and journalism were not in this race, maybe I'd be willing to give him a better look. But then it wouldn't be a real grade 1 race if this grade 3 winner monster is your dominant, top dog in here. So for me, it's journalism and fierceness all day over the 2 Midnight Mammoth as a long shot in the try.
Okay, so you want to play you're basic, like if you pick this race, if we asked if we did the old traditional picks, you would be 6-1-2. Is that right?
Yes.
And fading the 4 would be your fade against, or whatever you want to call that
Yes.
day you might do. Okay, so that makes it pretty easy. I mean, to me, you're just playing a cold exacta 6-1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what? Just out of curiosity, I mean, what price? I mean, journalism. You're going to get a better price on all these horses than you have recently.
Yeah.
And the one thing I will say is, it's not really my spot to give all my opinions. I'll have that on in both my articles, and I have a final work to do. But I normally, do think of the 3-year-old thing, but the fact that journalism has faced sovereignty in all these races, I think the 3-year-old crop holds up strong. It's
one of the best ones we've seen easily.
Yeah. So okay, so 6-1 exact. That's pretty simple. I don't think you'd want to. It sounds like you're pretty convinced with 6 on top. I don't think you want to reverse that or box that.
No, I probably wouldn't. Maybe me, 6-9 months ago would have, but after doing all of these
Now you
shows
can hit it twice as much if it comes in
right.
6-1, and what if it comes in 6? If it comes in 5-3, you still lose less, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's I'm going to
win right?
a bunch, or I'm going to lose a little. Basically, that's the way I look at it. I don't need to keep adding horses and doing a bunch of different configurations there. Just trying to wager smarter is always the goal.
Now, the trifecta, this is what I would say to do. I would key Midnight Mammoth for 2nd and 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
I would key, and then I would play journalism for more on top. But I would allow myself, because Midnight Mammoth is your stand, really, right?
Yeah.
Like in the try, that's how you're going to kind of separate from everyone,
Mm-hmm.
If you were, that's where you makes the try worth playing. So I would play it. I mean, this, we could get real detailed, but I would play it 6-1-2 cold for the most. But then I would also play it 1-6 with 2 with 1-6, and 1-6 with 1-6 with 2. Like I wouldn't want to get beat with, I would want to have a fierceness on top, given the way you're tossing NISOs and using a bit of a price. I think you would want to, make sure you hit it, because your stands are simple in there, right? Exactly, your stands are, I like this horse over this horse. You're not really separating, but in your stands in the try are, I'm tossing NISOs, and I like Midnight Mammoth to run 2nd or 3rd or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that's what you want to bet on, and that's how you would bet on that, instead of adding horses here or there. That you want to, but you want to hit it if it comes in 1-6-2, I think.
Yeah, I want to hit it regardless. I hope it comes in that way.
Well, but you just have to be willing to accept that you're not going to hit it sometimes, because you're not always going to be right.
Yeah, I hope that some of that scared money flocks to NISOs, and then my values get better. But we'll see.
Well, the Pacific Classic, Bailey, was a big enough surprise when journalism and fierceness basically in a 48-hour period announced that they would both be running, when it seemed like, maybe one would run, maybe both. Then we get the Jockey Club Gold Cup, who we kind of knew was going to show up there. It's on Sunday, a little bit of an early start time for TV purposes, 1:45 Eastern, 10:45 on the West Coast. So a nice little brunch treat. But this race has kind of been an afterthought to the Whitney the last, several years. Was a monster race on the calendar always before that. 1.25 miles. And Sierra Leone shows back up off the Whitney win. It'll be 3rd off the layoff. I would think this is probably it for him before the Breeders' Cup Classic. Maybe same is true of Mindframe, but they might try to get another race in him, since we haven't seen him since his win in the Foster. And then you got White Abario, who's trying to bounce back from a poor effort in the Whitney. And, that Whitney was a very fast-paced race, which is a big thing to take into note, because it should be again in here, because contrary thinking, Sierra Leone's bestie, Rabbit, is in here again. And along with Phileas Fogg, Bailey, I think there is going to be an honest pace. And then you got Highland Falls and Disarm, two horses that are from Kentucky-based barns for the majority of the year, that are going to be saving ground early and coming with a run. Both of them have run pretty successfully at Saratoga, and Antiquarian isn't hopeless at all. And Banishing, coming back from the Charlestown Classic on 9 days rest if David Jacobson runs. What a warrior he is. All right, so are you going to have me talk you off, or one of these favorites? Where are you at with them, or who struck your heart?
You sound like an owl now. I don't know what's going on with my lighting setup, so sorry if it just got really dark, but hopefully you can still hear me as well as you maybe can't see me. Anyways, I feel like there will be plenty of people out on the horse racing corners of the internet that are going to talk about these two shorter priced favorites or shorter priced choices, Sierra Leone and Mindframe. So I would like to use our time wisely and talk about the number 2, Highland Falls, underneath, and kind of get your opinion on how best to play him underneath probably a Sierra Leone and a Mindframe. And then maybe if there's like another horse that I'm overlooking, that would be a better fit over this one. He won this race last year over Pyrenees and Disarm, who we haven't really seen Pyrenees anymore, but Disarm comes back for this edition. His best recent form, unfortunately, has been with Flavien Prat, who obviously is going to ride Sierra Leone in this race. So he gets Louis Saez back aboard, who is not, bad with him at all, especially in the addition of the Whitney that we just saw. And I'm hoping for a decent paying exacta like we saw in the Whitney, Sierra Leone over Highland Falls. I like the way that Louise keeps him pretty close to Sierra Leone here and presses that pace, which we will see more horses contesting that pace based on the amount of front running, players that we have here, like you just mentioned. He hasn't really been off the board. Very little in his 12 lifetime starts. I think he likes the East Coast circuit better. So for me, I would like to try to play him alongside underneath Sierra Leone and Mindframe and see if there's a way that we can kind of eke out how best to do that.
So you think that Sierra Leone and Mindframe, one of them will win the race?
Yes.
And you think
I think it will be Sierra Leone.
The fire, or do you think there's a scenario kind of like the Whitney where Fierceness tires because they went fast and he moved early, and Mindframe or Sierra Leone, or do you think it's going to be 3-4, 4-3, and you're just trying to find who's going to finish third?
I would say if anyone's going to be likely to tire, I would probably lean towards Mindframe. I definitely have a long running bias with Sierra Leone though, because he was my Derby horse last year, and I stupidly root for him too many times when I shouldn't. When it pays off, it pays off. But when it doesn't, it really doesn't.
Let's work to talk me off, because from this angle, I'm not going to try to talk you off Sierra Leone, Mindframe, or even Highland Falls underneath right now. We'll talk about Highland Falls. I'll maybe poke some holes in them. But from Sierra Leone's perspective, maybe I'll just talk about him for a minute. He's going to get a good setup. He runs well when he gets a good setup, but he's never run 2 really, really good races in a row.
Back to back, yeah.
So he's third off the layoff. Theoretically, you would think this is going to be his best, but I don't know if we know that to be true. And he's going the mile and a quarter, and things really worked out for him last time. Whereas I think, you look at Highland Falls, who ran the race with him. I think you could make the case that he had a chance to beat Sierra Leone, but I think the a slightly slower pace, might give Highland Falls more of a shot. And maybe Louis will have him up a little closer. I think what we will see is contrary thinking, who didn't even break well last time, get rushed up. But if he breaks fine and Phileas Fogg and they two, were they really going to go at it again? Probably, huh?
I don't think that contrary thinking belongs in this race. And I hate to say that. I know it was a private purchase after those allowance wins, but an allowance horse is an allowance horse. This is a mile and a quarter grade
racing, one. Rabbits have been used in horse racing. I understand.
I have to like it.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. But that's why it kind of ensures that he's going to go, because there's no other reason for him to be in here. Right, and you look at Phileas Fogg. he sat second when somebody ran off on him a couple of times. So that's what I'm kind of wondering. Contrary thinking, like not only was it fast last time, but it was contentious because he didn't break well and then he rushed up, and it makes it that much more contentious. If somebody just says, all right, I'm letting him go, it just
Yeah.
takes away from a little bit of the contention, because I think that Mind Frame is not going to be dealing with that. He's going to have to show that, he doesn't need the lead, So I
Yeah.
think that's what could work against Sierra Leone if I was trying to talk someone off. But he's a horse that I've never really been excited about betting, since the Derby, where I thought, he kind of showed that he was, maybe a little bit of mental finishing off the deal issues. But
Yeah.
I think this is a really good spot for him. I'm not like super against him in here, but that would be my knock. Now, if Highland Falls, what's wrong with? First off, let me ask you. You just don't think he's as good as Sierra Leone in Mind Frame? Like you think his
Yeah.
ceiling is beating one of them, not both?
I would say so, yes. I don't think he could beat both.
Okay. So third off the layoff, positives are, this horse has always been treated by Brad Cox as a grinder, like needs the, and I say that not in a bad way, but just needs as much distance as possible.
Yeah.
He's ever going to run a race like, this kind of feels like the time. I thought he ran great last time,
Mm-hmm.
good setup, pretty good ride. But what can Louis do different to beat Sierra Leone? Or maybe just a mile and a quarter is better? Or for your case, you don't want him to.
No, I don't want him to beat Sierra Leone. I would like him to finish. I mean, it would pay better if he did, but I mean, likely outcomes and payouts is something that we can weigh all day long.
Right. Well, look, I mean, this horse, if I'm trying to talk you off this horse, it's outside of the Whitney, he's just, been a class below the top couple in his career. And
Yeah.
even, the White Barrios. But, he stacks up fine in this field. I'm going to try to give him a look as I get, I like to use the Theragraphs and do a little more digging. And this card hasn't been out enough for all the data to be out, but I'm giving him an outside look to run his best, because to me, I mean, they want to win these races, Sierra Leone and Mind Frame, but like they are, thinking Breeders' Cup Classic. Highland Falls would be more than happy to win this and think Breeders' Cup Classic when it's time to think Breeders' Cup Classic,
Yeah. Cross that bridge or over those falls when we get there, pretty much.
Let's cross over those Highland Falls before we get there. This is a good race, though, isn't it?
Yeah, this is an incredible race. I think I might like it better than the Pacific Classic, honestly. I mean, it's $1.25 million. Why ship all the way out there if you don't have to, when you can stay on, maybe your
Well, no one
closer
did
circuit?
other than Fierceness, who has Mind Frame as a stablemate, right?
Right, because they don't have to.
Yeah, and I think they wanted Mind Frame for this spot all along. I don't know. I think it's interesting. Maybe they're trying to sort out if they run one of both. They're going to run them both in the Classic if they both run well. But what happens if Fierceness doesn't run well at a mile and a quarter out there? Run them in the 2-turn Breeders' Cup Mile.
Yeah.
Maybe Mind Frame. Who knows? But yeah, lots of impacts this week, because this will be pretty much it in terms of the big boys taking on each other in this division before the Breeders' Cup Classic.
As always, thank you so much for watching another episode of Horse Sense. I'm Bailey Armour and was joined alongside the always wonderful Scott Shapiro, talking through the Pacific Classic at Del Mar and the Jockey Club Gold Cup at Saratoga as those meets wind down to a close. Make sure that you check out all the promotions we're running on both of those and more this weekend on Xpressbet and FirstBet. And let us know who your picks are in these two monster older horse divisions as we get ready for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Good luck.